Welcome back to Buy or Buy. In today's explainer, we are looking at the absolute undisputed physical embodiment of 1980s automotive design. Honestly, if you had a car poster on your bedroom wall back in that decade, there is a very, very high probability it was this exact car. We're focusing exclusively on the legendary 1984 through 1996 Ferrari Testarossa lineage. So that means the original Testarossa, the heavily updated 512 TR, and the ultra-rare F512 M. No V8s today, no front-engine Grand Tours. We are just talking about the mid-engine, Flat-12 icon that completely defined an era.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this quote perfectly captures the hilarious reality behind some of the greatest automotive legends. You know those famous Pininfarina side strakes? Those wild horizontal cooling fins running from the doors all the way back to the rear quarter panels? Well, they weren't actually just some aggressive styling choice. They were a strictly functional engineering necessity. See, Ferrari's predecessor, the 512 BB, had a really notorious problem with the cabin overheating because the coolant plumbing basically ran from the front radiators all the way to the mid-mounted engine. To fix it, Ferrari just moved the radiators to the rear flanks. So Pininfarina had to figure out how to direct cooling air into those new rear intakes, and in doing so, they took a literal HVAC band-aid and turned it into the most defining visual signature in sports car history.
And man, that signature design led to absolute cultural supremacy. The Testarossa didn't just define the 1980s, it literally became the 1980s. Ferrari knew they had something incredibly special right out of the gate, so they chose to debut the car at the Lido Cabaret Club on the Champs-Élysées right before the 1984 Paris Motor Show, and it just exploded from there. Within 2 years, millions of people were watching Sonny Crockett driving a pristine white Testarossa under the neon lights in Miami Vice. If you went to an arcade, you were definitely driving a red one in Sega's Outrun. And if you played PC games a decade later, it was the cover star of EA's original Need for Speed. It completely conquered television, gaming, and pop culture.
But the beauty wasn't just skin deep, it was mechanical. Mounted longitudinally, right behind the cabin, is a legendary 4.9-liter Flat-12 engine. Now, the name Testarossa simply translates from Italian to redhead, and this was a really romantic, deliberate nod to the red-painted cam covers of the engine itself. It was paying direct homage to Ferrari's legendary 1957 250 Testarossa racing car. Ferrari really wanted this new flagship's badge to carry some genuine historical weight, and they absolutely nailed it.
So let's take a look at how this whole lineage actually evolved over its 12-year run. Across this entire timeline, Ferrari built exactly 9,939 of these cars. The story starts back in 1984 with the original Testarossa. This was the purest expression of that incredible side-strake design. Then, fast forward a bit to 1991, and we get the 512 TR. This was a massive re-engineering effort from Ferrari that smoothed out the styling and drastically improved how the car actually drove. And finally, jumping to 1994, the F512 M arrives to close out the lineage, and that one ran until 1996. Let's compare those first two eras directly so you can really get a sense of the evolution. Starting with the original 1984 Testarossa, that Flat-12 was pushing out 380 horsepower, and it was a massive commercial success for Maranello. They built 7,177 of those original cars. Now contrast that with the 512 TR that arrived in 1991. The power jumps up significantly to 428 horsepower. But honestly, the bigger deal is that Ferrari actually lowered the engine mounting in the chassis. That improved the center of gravity and gave it a much better balance. They only built 2,261 of these, making them noticeably rarer and, frankly, much better to drive.
Which brings us to the grand finale, the F512 M. This one is the rarest of the rare. Power was pushed even further, up to 440 horsepower. Visually, you can't miss it, because Ferrari actually ditched the pop-up headlights entirely for fixed quad headlamps under glass covers. But the real historical weight of the F512M, they only built 501 of them, and it marks the absolute end of an era. It is literally the last Ferrari road car ever produced with a Flat-12 engine.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how quickly it shatters that whole nostalgic dream we've been building up. Because if you actually want to buy one of these today, you have to face this $12,000 reality. That right there can be the cost of the mandatory timing belt service. The Testarossa's Flat-12 has 4 timing belts, and to even access them, the entire engine and transaxle must be dropped completely out of the chassis. Specialist labor at a certified Ferrari shop is going to run you anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000. Oh, and Ferrari mandates this service every 30,000 miles or every 5 years, literally regardless of how much you actually drive it.
And hey, if you're thinking, you know what, I'll just skip that 5-year service interval to save some cash, well, $80,000. That is the terrifying mathematical consequence of skipping that belt service. See, the Flat-12 is an interference engine, so if an old belt snaps while you're driving down the road, the pistons smash straight into the valves. The engine just completely destroys itself. And a complete Flat-12 rebuild at a certified specialist is going to demand between $40,000 and $80,000. It is an absolute non-negotiable risk.
But wait, because there is so much more. Let's do a quick ownership reality check here. Right around 50,000 miles, thermostress often causes the cylinder head gaskets to fail. That is an $8,000 to $15,000 fix. Then you've got the Bosch fuel distributors on the 1984 to 1991 cars. They harden with age, and that's $3,000 to $6,000 to rebuild. If the car sits for too long, the rubber bladders inside the fuel cells literally rot away. There goes another $4,000 to $7,000. Add in failing pop-up headlamp motors, those infamous 1980s Italian electrical gremlins, and the sheer fact that certified Ferrari specialist labor runs between $300 and $500 an hour, and you start to really see the true cost of nostalgia.
Which makes the current market pricing even more intense. The average original Testarossa sale sits at about $145,000 right now, usually trading somewhere between $80,000 and $200K. The vastly improved 512 TR commands a lot more. You're usually looking between $150,000 and $300,000, with the average right around $292,000. And just to show you how crazy this market can actually get, the highest recorded sale was $2.2 million for an incredibly rare 512 TR Spider back in November 2023. And then there's the F512 M. Because it's the final Flat-12 and it's so incredibly rare, it is now a $1 million collector piece. Ultra-clean examples are pulling up to $1.5 million today.
Just to give you a little bit of market context here, let's look at the alternatives. You could go backward to the Testarossa's predecessor, the 512BB, but you're going to be looking at $200,000 to $500,000. You could look at its ultimate 1980s rival to Lamborghini Countach, but that's going to cost you between $300,000 and $600,000. Or you could look forward to Ferrari's immediate V8 successor line. Something like the brilliant mid-engine 355 trades right in the exact same $80,000 to $200,000 sweet spot as the original Testarossa. So, if you're watching this and you absolutely must have the Flat-12, there are basically three valid buying strategies. The smart pick is a late original Testarossa, roughly 1989 to 1991, with full Ferrari Classic certification and a freshly completed engine-out belt service. You can find those for around $150,000 to $180,000. The driver's pick is undeniably the 512 TR at around $250,000 to $300,000, simply because that lower engine placement makes it a genuinely better sports car to drive. And the collector pick is, of course, the F512 M, sitting somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million.
So, the crucial point is our final verdict. And for the Testarossa lineage, we have to give it a definitive buy. New? Obviously not available. Production ended in 1996. Used? You're looking at anywhere from $80K to $1.5 million. Look, there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting a genuine cultural artifact with one of the greatest engine sounds in history. We totally get it. But the math is just brutal. The sheer reality of requiring Ferrari-specific specialist support, plus a mandatory $5,000 to $12,000 engine-out service every single 5 years, it absolutely destroys the casual ownership fantasy. When you have a $150,000 budget, the smart money simply buys a much more usable, modern V8 Ferrari that isn't going to punish you financially just for letting it sit in your garage.
Which really leaves us with this final thought. Seeing that glorious red-streaked profile under a streetlight might transport you instantly back to an arcade cabinet in 1986, but you really have to ask yourself, is the romanticized dream of 1980s pop culture nostalgia actually worth absorbing the reality of a six-figure maintenance nightmare? Let us know what you guys think down in the comments, and we will see you next time on Buy or Buy.